To break down the format for y'all, we're going to start with introductions made by each individual candidate that will last 3 minutes. We will then move to a first round of general questions. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the same question. And then we're going to move into the third round, which is in 2 individual questions, possibly 3, tailored to each candidate specifically based on something that he or she has said in her own platform. So, without further ado, let's get our candidates up here. We have Michael Herbert. Come on up. We've got Ben Ackerman. Come on up. We've got Sarah Miller. And Leah Motzkin. Okay, let me get my calendar. So we're going to start with Sarah Miller. So if you could come on up, stand up. And, 1 second. And on your go, you can give your introduction.
Okay. Hello, my name is Sarah Miller. I'm a sophomore in Pearson College, and obviously I'm running for Yale College Council President. The reason I decided to run was, well, I became interested in YCC over this past year. I was a YCC representative, and one thing that stood out to me particularly was financial aid, because that's something that's personal for myself, which if you read my op-ed, I mentioned that. And I know it's something that a lot of people care about as well. Also, gender neutral housing is something that needs to happen for the next incoming class. It's not something we can say, we're going to just kind of work on it. It's something we need to push forward. Last year, I wanted to live in a gender neutral house for my sophomore year, and it was impossible. So we systematically went around it, and we have a gender neutral house right now. They're all right there. So that's something that we need to not push off for the next board to take care of. It's something that we start over the summer, and then once school starts, we have a committee ready to work on it. No more like logistical reasons, unclear logistical reasons for why it can't happen. No more issues of we're not mature enough for it to happen. And another big thing for me is the UOC funding. I think Ben did an awesome job at the end of the second semester. He came in and he made it very clear, the grant cycle, so people knew what they were applying for, and that's something that should continue on to next year. There should be clearly updated each grant cycle, what's being put where, and then also having a student liaison system with the UOC members so that they are working with particular groups so they have a clear, direct answer on how to apply the funding. No more like arbitrary reasons to be rejected, but more of a clear cut, hey, I can talk to you specifically and throughout the whole year have answers on how that would be done. My name is Sarah Miller again. I'm free to talk whenever you'd like. I would love to be your YCC president. That's me.
Ben.
Hello everyone, my name is Ben Ackerman. I am a sophomore in Timothy Dwight College, which is of course the best residential college here at Yale. Shout out to those TDers. So I started my YCC journey when I was a freshman. I actually decided that I wanted to run as a freshman to be Timothy Dwight's representative. It wasn't a competitive race. I decided to run because I was interested in Yale, and I was interested in student government at Yale. I lost that race. It was something that upset me, but I went back and I asked myself, why did I run? Why did I decide that I wanted to be in the Yale College Council? And I looked inward and I said, I wanted to be in the Yale College Council because I think that we here at Yale have a tremendous ability to affect change on our campus and around the world, just by being Yale students. And from that, I decided that I wanted to continue being involved. I used that first year to be an associate member. I went to every single YCC meeting. I worked with John and Debbie and Danny, and it was a really invigorating experience to be able to be involved. And when the time came, I ran again. This time I ran to be the chair of the Undergraduate Organizations Committee, and that was at the end of my freshman year. I was fortunate enough to have won that election, and I've loved every second that I've spent in that role. There have been some extremely difficult times. You know, we receive only a budget that can fund 30% of our requests, and those are held personally against me. And I regret every single moment I have to say no. But those decisions I know are critical to our student body. And I know that I can continue to make those critical decisions as YCC president. I'm running because we need to have a greater voice here at Yale. We don't have the opportunities that other students at other schools around the world have. We don't have the opportunity to engage with administrators productively and actually affect change. We have to go through an entire recommendation process that could take weeks, it could take months, it could take years. And Sarah alluded to that when she talked about gender-neutral housing for sophomores. We need to fix the system here at Yale, and we need to ensure that we have the opportunity to be able to positively affect change on campus, so that 1 year down the road, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, when bigger questions will arise, we'll have the capacity to deal with them then, and we'll have the capacity to deal with them properly. Thank you, and thank you guys all for turning out. It's much better than last year.
Next up, we've got Leah.
Hi everyone. Elect me, Leah Moxkin, to be your YCC president, so I can make YCC the direct voice of the student body. The role of the YCC president is threefold. First, it is to manage the overall affairs of the council. I am the best candidate for this job because the president needs to be someone who can work well with everyone on the council. The president can't be a full polarizing figure. A president needs to create cohesiveness within the council. And I have serious concerns after seeing the way this campaign season has played out about some of the other candidates' ability to do so. This year, I have proven that I can work well within the council. Of YCC and FCC reps who have chosen to endorse in this race, an overwhelming majority have chosen to support me, about 75%. These will be many of the members of the council next year, and I think being able to run them and have the respect that requires is something that I could bring to the table. The second role of the YCC president is to be the student body's face to the administration. As much as I want to believe otherwise, YCC and the student body is only invited to the table to have discussions with administrators if the YCC president is respected and constantly earns her right to be at the table. This is not to say I will not be firm in pushing the student voice. I will be. We have to also constantly be grateful for the fact that we are there. We cannot come in with so many demands that can't actually happen. A candidate who is not selective or realistic in his or her demands will not be able to become an integral part of the conversation. At the same time, when the student body feels strongly about an issue, I will push the issue to the forefront and galvanize student support as a result. The third role of the YCC president is acting as the face of the student body, and this involves getting a lot more student representation. In my ideal world, whenever an individual or a community of any size has an idea or an issue, their first thought would be, what can YCC do about it? I'm aware that this is not the case, but what is so exciting about being at a four-year institution is that within 4 years, we have a completely new student body and a reputation can completely change. I am confident that I can lay the groundwork next year for a more positive interaction between YCC and the student body, so that the student body can be heard in the administration. To do so, I will create a secondary constituency for every YCC representative. In addition to representing residential college communities, each member will also be responsible for a different subset of the Yale College life. They will attend open meetings for organizations like Dwight Hall, La Casa, the Yale Drama Coalition, and Athletes in Action, to name a few. And they will get to know the leadership and the members of these groups. Additionally, when you have a concern, you will know exactly whom to turn to. Not only will it be your YC rep, it will be someone who is present at your meetings. When we have asked the student body to come to us again and again, this is not working. In order for a real shift in the interaction between YCC and student body to take place, we need to start coming to you. As YCC president, I will listen to you. I will be your voice, someone you can trust, someone you can sit down with, someone you can be excited about. Thank you, and thank you so much for coming.
And last but not least, Michael Herbert.
Thank you, Kyle, and thank you to the three of you. As some of you may know, my background is very different from theirs. I have not been on YCC, I was not on FCC. But my journey up to this point has included a lot of leadership experience. And when you look at, for example, a state government, sometimes you see someone who gets out of law school, they clerk for the state judge for a little while, then they work for the attorney general, spend some time as a state senator, maybe a comptroller, check all the boxes within government, and then rise to run the state. Other times you have someone who comes from the outside, someone who's distinguished himself in the private sector, or a celebrity, or even an athlete. like Ronald Reagan, an unpopular one, or maybe Jesse Ventura, right? Little love for the liberal? No? Basically, what I'm saying is I just don't like this premise of only an insider can run YCC. And I think we also need to ask ourselves, how is YCC doing? And on March 25th, YCC contacted me 4 times to let me know how they were doing. First, they sent me an email announcing the Dean's Search Town Hall, and they sent me another email correcting the location of the Dean's Search Town Hall, and then they sent me a 3rd email explaining why they could not get gender-neutral housing, which was, in my opinion, the most important YCC project of this year. So at this point, I was asking myself, well, what has YCC done? And for the 4th time that day, they sent me a brochure explaining what they'd done. Now, I don't know how many of you have read this brochure. There are a lot of really good projects in there. There are a lot of really good things that YCC has done. There are a lot of things that YCC can do to make student life better, and we've seen that this year with the addition of 1 day to reading period, with the student activities being covered by financial aid. But I think YCC can do more. I think YCC can lead on sexual assault, an issue that CNN covered, that Huffington Post covered, but YCC was silent. YCC was asleep at the switch. And on something so important to campus safety, I think that's unacceptable. And I want to see YCC lead with comprehensive solutions, as opposed to superficial ones that they can then put in the brochure. And that's why on financial aid, instead of speaking words about how I want to make Yale more affordable, I have proposed a very specific index which will make Yale more affordable going forward. Now, there are serious issues, there are serious concerns, and I'm eager to engage with them. Leah pointed out, since this election's begun, some people have been seen as polarizing. And I agree with that. And I'm concerned about the tone of the campaign, and specifically I want to address one aspersion that people have come up to me about my opinions on gay marriage. Now, people are claiming that I am against gay marriage. This is patently untrue. I have addressed it head on. People have claimed that the source of this information was a YPU debate. I spoke to the YPU Executive Board earlier today, and they will be releasing the minutes from every YPU debate that I have been at since I was at Yale. If there is a statement from me saying that I do not support gay marriage, I will drop out, because I want a YCC for everyone, and when 25% of the people here are gay, we will advocate for them. And to that community specifically, I will say, I will be your advocate. I will use my strong leadership experience. And when the administration says, no, we can't get gender neutral housing because of logistics, I will say, yes, we can. Yes, sir, and I'm out of time.
Okay, cool. So, just hey.
Mr. Tremonti, I would like to make a speech before the assembly.
Can it wait?
Can it wait? Miss Motzkin, other candidates. I am Frank. I am here to announce my candidacy for treasurer of the YCC. Now, it has come to my attention that there is no such post as treasurer of the YCC. I think it's called finance director. This is a great injustice. Where's the treasurer? For my campaign, I say X marks the spot. I am interested in Yale. We need a change. Yes, times are hard, but we fight on. What, may I ask, is money?
Mr. Cahill.
I would also like to say that I too support gay marriage.
Okay, back to the debate.
Okay, I promise the rest of the night will be as exciting. So just to explain to you how the rest of it's going to go. So basically, we're going to ask 2 general questions of each candidate. They're each going to have a minute to respond. Just so everyone knows, we're going to double tap when you have 10 seconds left. And I guess I'm just going to pound you guys to keep talking. So there'll be 2 general questions. Then after that, we'll move into specific questions for each candidate. So we have 2 or 3 specific questions for each one of you. We'll obviously make it clear who we're asking. Just so everyone knows, each of you have 2 chances for rebuttal. So you have 2 30-second chances. If someone else says something and you want to follow up and maybe respond to something or say something of your own, you have 2 of those chances that can be used throughout the course of the debate, either during the general questions or if you want to follow up to something that was a question specifically asked to the candidate. So are you guys all clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool? Okay, cool. So we'll move to the general questions. Why don't we just start with Michael, and then we'll just move down the line. As a reminder, everyone has a minute. So the first thing that we want to ask you guys is, over the past year, what is one thing that you think that the YCC has done particularly well that you think you would continue doing? But on the other hand, what is one thing you think the YCC did poorly, and how would you have changed it or done it differently had you had an opportunity?
So yeah, one thing YCC has done very well was their restructuring. An inefficient organization was given the structures to be efficient, and that's something that will be utilized hopefully by the next president to make YCC more effective. One thing YCC did extremely poorly, and my big issue is sexual assault, not speaking out on that, but I want to talk about divestment, because there's a referendum process in place for student initiatives. This initiative met extremely high criteria, yet the administration did not meet with the leaders of the divestment movement until April, even though the divestment referendum passed in November. That's unacceptable. And if an organization leads a referendum while I am president, I guarantee that their leadership will meet with the administration within 1 month. And I am going to work very hard with Fossil Free Yale and with the Environmental Coalition to get them meetings with the administration.
Cool.
That was pretty cool. I think that the Yale College Council has really tackled the issue of student organizations. We're certainly not done, but I think that we've made a significant leap forward. And we've made a leap forward to that regard because student organizations were never part of the conversation until this year. And finally, we're recognizing the fact that here on campus, we have a problem related to financing student organizations. There's 400 to 500 student organizations on campus at any time, and we're finally starting to discuss how we can provide them better resources. We're finally starting to discuss how we can manage allocating our $200,000 budget to 400 or 500 student organizations at a time. There's no way that we can at all meet the demand. So I'm really excited that we're having that conversation and that the YCC has taken the UOC under its wing and really started to do the function of a student organization.
Sarah?
Okay, well, the expansion of YCC was something I think was very positive. Instead of focusing specifically on how we are going to publicize events, we now have a team that can handle that so we can focus more specifically on current issues and policy issues. And YCC also happens to be something people are talking about right now. Getting people to care is something that's really important and something YCC needs to focus on. YCC needs to be something that people want to go to work with. A place where I think it failed this year was in transparency, not only within the board, but outside of the board. There's oftentimes I didn't know what was going to happen, and then the next day I would get an email telling me what we would be doing that day. But being an open place for people to come and pushing through like the referendum, we can't hold a referendum if we're not going to stand by what we say. The report that went out was very short and just pretty much explained the referendum process, and that's something we need to push.
Thanks. Leah?
Okay, I also think one of the best things we've done this year is implementing this new structure as well as an expansion. This has been huge because the administration knows exactly who they interface with and has made that go back and forth really very effective. And also, in expanding the number of students involved with YC and what they actually do, I think that's critical, especially because there are 24 members in the YCC council does not mean that they necessarily have the best skills or even the interest that the student body has. So I think that idea is something that we definitely need to continue on. I think, so in order to kind of change that in the future and continue that positive trend, I think the role of the representative needs to be transferred into more of a facilitation role. Rather than presenting a report that's finished and opening up to criticism, we now instead need to get engaged students in the conversation on every step who have interest, and that's what the secondary constituency speaks to.
Great, thanks so much. So for the second question, we're going to start the other way. So we're going to do reverse order, so we're going to start with you. So the second question that we have is, what is the most controversial opinion you hold that sets you apart from other candidates and is something other people may not necessarily believe in? So feel free to talk about parts of your platform, your view of the role of the YCC, etc. But basically, we're looking for something that you can say that is your view that you don't think is something that everyone else in the room necessarily thinks.
Awesome. I think, again, to keep bringing back the same point, my idea of bringing YCC to different student organizations and to different student groups and really changing the way that YCC engages with the student body is what really sets me apart. In order for this interaction that has been characterized rather negatively in the past few years to finally begin a shift of perception, this is the only way that this can happen. I've heard a lot of very positive feedback from leadership of different organizations who really would love to have a YC member come to open meetings, to really become a part of the community so that when there is an issue, they know who to turn to. And then I've also heard representatives who are excited to get to know a constituency they might not know otherwise, as well as to find projects on their own rather than a more top-down approach. That way, what we are presenting is based in fact. Thank you.
Thanks. Sarah?
I guess my most controversial opinion would be what our role is with the corporation. Having a student voice on the corporation is, of course, very controversial. People question the feasibility of it happening. But there are colleges around the U.S. that has a student voice on the corporation. And so to deny that Yale has that capacity or the ability for that to happen is downright false. Meeting with a member of the corporation, she said it didn't seem fair. There's alumni on it, and we'll get to vote on it after we graduate. But what does that mean to us after we graduate? We need to be on it now. YCC's role is to give recommendations and to push for change and to mobilize student voice. But what if we had a student on there directly having an opinion that not only could be heard, but will be taken seriously because they will have voting rights?
Great, thanks so much. Ben?
I happen to agree with Sarah on this one. The first point, the first thing that I mentioned here today was that the YCC needs to have more influence. One way to do that is by putting a student on the Yale Corporation. We can work with the administration in other ways to increase the voice that students have with regard to decision making here on campus. Just like the faculty have a voice with regard to every academic decision that's made here on campus, I think students should have the same voice as well. Putting a student on the Yale Corporation is just one method by which we could achieve that overall process, that overall change in the decision-making paradigm here on campus. And I think we need to focus more heavily on that. Because without the ability for students to become involved in the decision-making paradigm here on campus, it doesn't matter what else we're trying to pursue. We need to have a voice in order to make a difference.
And I agree with Ben and Sarah that student voice needs to be on the Yale Corporation, but in order for that to come from YCC, YCC needs to be representative. And when 7 out of 12 colleges don't have contested elections, as happened last fall, I think there are legitimate concerns about how representative YCC really is. So I think the most controversial thing I have done, excuse me, I can't talk. The most controversial thing I've done is reached out to student leaders who I know well and encouraged them to run based on knowing that they will be able to work with me on specific projects that I am proposing, such as my comprehensive solution to financial aid.
So now we're going to move into the questions tailored towards individual candidates based on their platform. Sarah Miller, we're going to start with you. In your platform, you say that students should feel that they can seek, in the mental health section of your platform, you say, students should feel that they can seek mental health services through Yale and not face forced withdrawal without due process. Given that Yale Health does not disclose and explain evaluation standards in order to prevent students from altering their behavior during the clinical period to avoid withdrawal, how would you define due process? What do you mean by that phrase?
Okay. What I meant by that is that students, currently there redesigning the website so that it is a clear-cut process of what is going to happen when they reach out to different organizations or different committees who they want to talk to, or what people they should go to. There is a clear divide with peer help, institutional help, and keeping that very transparent, I guess, is what I meant. So people don't fear going to seek out help for their issues because they fear being sent home. The processes are not up online, but they could say, like, this is how mental health, this is how we treat mental health. This is how we're going to handle your situation. And I guess that's what I meant by due process.
Thank you.
Cool. Moving on to Ben. So almost every candidate so far who's running has claimed that they'll reform the UOC in some way. So Leah says in her platform that she will work to increase UOC transparency. Sarah says she will reevaluate the rigid allocation of funding and that students right now are forced to navigate a confusing bureaucratic system with no clear guidelines. So given your tenure as Student Organizations Director, is there anything you wish you had done differently in distributing funding this past year, and how would you deal with the stuff the other candidates have said about the way the UOC operated this year?
Great question. As I mentioned before, student organizations are incredibly important here on campus. And one thing that I do regret is not digging into the funding guidelines on day one. The funding guidelines are set by the Yale College Dean's Office and have to be approved by the Committee on Undergraduate Organizations, the CUO. I know, the acronyms are getting crazy. But one thing that the UOC has done this year, it's increased transparency dramatically. You can go onto our website, yale.edu/UOC, and you can find every single dollar that we allocated since January. Who applied for them, and where did the dollars go? Now, I would have loved to have been able to do every single dollar for the entire year, but it just wasn't feasible during the first semester due to some administrative hurdles that we had to overcome. So, at the beginning of this year, we did not have the capacity to handle any applications. We completely built that from the ground up, and we unfortunately had to cut our old system loose since it was designed in 2000. So there's a lot of behind the scenes work that has to be done in the UOC, but we need to make sure that our systems are up to date, and we also need to make sure that we continue issuing that transparency and defining funding guidelines as well.
Thanks. Cool. So Leah, what we want to ask you is that you say on your platform that you want to push for more job listings outside of the dreaded finance and consulting sectors. So from your understanding, what is the process by which these job listings actually get put up, and how do you plan to work with UCS to attract these listings outside of those areas? Who specifically will you talk to about this issue?
My website has actually since been changed, and that is no longer on it, but I would love to still talk about that. For UCS, I think one of our biggest issues is just interfacing with simplicity. I think students don't really understand exactly the best, exactly how to use that platform, and I think it could be taken a long way. And I guess who specifically within UCS, I think the first person I would speak to would be Secretary Goff Cruz to make a connection with someone within UCS, and it would then be whoever the director is. I think a lot of what UCS should be aiming for are, again, outside of finance and consulting, is taking a lot more data from what students are actually interested in and using that data that YC would gather through a project to tailor what else they should be working on. Also, I think by bringing office hours, UCS office hours to a more central location on campus, it's done a great job moving forward, and we should continue to promote that.
I'd like to rebut.
Yeah, go for it.
I just want to point out that Secretary Goff Cruz would not be the correct person to be in contact with for this regard. If you're YCC President, Leah, you should reach out to Janine Daines. She's actually the one in charge and actually the one who has the ability to make those changes. She's done a fantastic job. She's brand new, so we have the opportunity to work with her moving forward.
Great, thanks so much.
Next up is Michael. On your platform, Mike, you say that you've spoken preliminary with Cesar Storlazzi, Director of Financial Aid here at Yale, and that you are...
Not to cut you off, Kyle, but shockingly, when I went to talk to Mr. Sorlaz...
Let me finish the question.
Fair enough.
I'm merely quoting your platform.
No, I know.
You have spoken preliminary with Mr. Cesar Storlazzi, Director of Financial Aid, and that you are, quote, confident that with rigorous commitment, a comprehensive solution to the rising cost of student contributions can be achieved through an index. Given the $40 million deficit the university currently faces. What things did you talk about with Mr. Storlai that you could tell us that made you say you were so confident you can find a solution?
Yes, sir. So first off, what I was going to say when I cut you off, my apologies, was when I went to sit down with Mr. Storlazzi, shockingly, when he found out I wasn't already on YCC, he didn't kick me out. He agreed to engage with me anyway, and I think that that's true for administrators in general. To that specifically, the concern I have, Kyle, is we've seen the expected student contribution for someone on full financial aid rise from $4,900 to $6,400 since 2008. This process has been opaque. There has been a lack of transparency. If my index had been in place in 2008, the expected student contribution today would be $5,343.29. It's about $1,100 less than it is now. The reason I am confident was because when I spoke with Mr. Storlazzi about an index, he cited the CPI specifically, and he said that there was a conversation to be had. Now, obviously, he didn't make any promises, but he certainly seemed open to continuing that dialogue.
Great, thanks so much. So the next question is for Sarah. So in your platform, you say that students should feel that they can seek mental health services. Wait, oh, jokes. Also in your platform, you discuss reforming student contribution policies and the way that campus jobs are allocated in your platform. I think that's something that you talked about earlier as well. So what would your ideal policy be for allocating campus jobs? How would you account for students who don't necessarily qualify for financial aid but still need a way to earn money to support themselves?
Well, this is a problem that's going to be raised anyways because the way student jobs are going to be treated next year with the new 50-50 change. So what's going to happen, my ideal system was that students, instead of just being highly preferenced, were given the opportunity to receive jobs on a priority level, students on financial aid, for the first 2 weeks. That's something that is kind of in place right now, but the wording is highly preferenced. That would be my ideal, but since the system has changed for next year, I'm not sure how that's going to affect student jobs on campus. For students that are not necessarily on financial aid, that have different circumstances that they are facing. My student income contribution change was for grants over the summer. Student income contribution refers to summertime contribution. It's not what you make over the school year. And my proposal was that we'd be able to put grants through Yale towards that so people can take unpaid internships as well.
Great, thanks so much.
Ben, in your platform you discussed increasing meal swipes for people outside of the existing swipes in hours, particularly over to Durkee's. Given that expanding dining swipes was wholesale rejected 2 years ago and YCC looked into the project because it was deemed financially impractical and impossible by Yale Dining, do you have any new information that would allow you to believe this, and what is it that is in existence?
So it's a great question, and I think the thing that we have to know is that when the administration says no, it doesn't mean we have to stop. It doesn't mean that we can't continue asking questions, and it doesn't mean that we can't continue trying to seek the optimal solution for ourselves as students. And I know that working with the YCC Executive Board this year, we've seen a lot of improvements with our relationship with Yale Dining, and I'm confident that we can continue to grow that relationship in a manner that we can continue to improve the services that they offer students. So I would like to just commend Sarah's work for what she did for the YCC and for students working with Yale Dining, and I think that we can build on her work moving forward. So we don't have to stop with a no.
Great, thanks so much. So Michael, this question is for you. So on your platform, you say that you want to eliminate insider preference for being appointed to the YCC Executive Board, and that while you are personally committed to filling those positions with insiders, you believe that constitutionally binding the positions to YCC experience undermines the ability of the president and the vice president to select the best person for the job by significantly narrowing the field of candidates. Given that you only need to attend 3 YCC meetings out of about 20 plus meetings a year in order to be eligible to be appointed, and that over 100 people currently meet that affiliation standard, do you think this is actually an unreasonable requirement that you want to change for people to be eligible to be appointed to the executive board?
And the reason I think it is a bad requirement is because of the idea that you have to. I agree 100% that you should, but hypothetically, if David Axelrod decided to leave the Obama team and be an undergrad at Yale again, he had a midlife crisis, we couldn't name him communications director because he hadn't been on YCC. Now, there is extreme value to having people with experience in those positions, and especially as an outsider, I am extremely committed to making sure that they do and working with the advisory committee and working with those individuals. But what I don't like is the idea that you have to, because those positions should go to the most qualified person, regardless of whether they're done. The last point is, it's not true that they only have to go to 3 meetings. They also have to submit a petition, which has to be reviewed. There's a process they have to go to. To be able to submit the petition, they have to go to 3 meetings.
Great, thanks so much. Okay. Cool. So basically what we're going to do now is those are the questions that we have for the candidates, but I'm sure that you guys have a couple too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to open it up to the floor if you guys have questions for candidates.
Leah, excuse me, I haven't received my second question,
Okay. Leah. There you go.
We're seeing if you were paying attention.
Exactly. Leah's ready for a question. In your platform, you say that I will, quote, I will work to implement a more accessible and less intimidating reporting process for sexual misconduct. Can you elaborate on what particular policy aspects of reporting procedures that you feel are inadequate right now? What would you propose to fix them?
Additionally, this is a completely different set of text than is currently on my platform. So unfortunately, that is not something that I am very able to speak to right now. But in general, I think that YC should take a stronger stance and a stronger leading role on helping to push forward with the dialogue on sexual misconduct and connecting students who have been victimized with the correct resources on campus.
I'd like to rebut that.
Right.
Just very quick, I don't understand then why we didn't. When this issue was being covered by CNN, by Huffington Post, by Forbes, when it was drawing national outrage, why was YCC silent? Why didn't YCC release a statement then? And why hasn't YCC done more to eliminate this loophole in the timing of penalties where people who are suspended, for example, for 1 semester, only miss a few weeks? So we can say all the words we want about how this is bad, but I just don't understand why YCC has not acted.
Now we'll open it up to the floor. Is there anyone in particular that you're targeting your question towards, or is it a general question for all candidates?
It's a general question.
Perfect.
So I wanted to know what the candidates thought the YCC's relationship should be with cultural houses, and how, in what ways they would like to try to implement a better relationship.
Yeah, just to be clear, each of you is going to have 30 seconds to answer the question. So why don't we just start with, we'll do the same.
I haven't started yet, so I'm happy to start.
Great, love it, eager beaver. Okay. So you can go ahead, you can start, and then
I don't mean to steal your
no,
authority.
totally fine. And then Michael can go, and then Leah, etc. So go first.
So
Everyone
I
has
think
30 seconds.
one of the most important ways that we can strengthen ties with any cultural body on campus is through student organizations. We need to figure out a better way to fund student organizations that are affiliated with cultural houses, and also student organizations that are affiliated with other departments and institutes here at Yale. There's no unified application for funding. There's no coordination between different funding sources, and we need to make sure that all groups have the same accessibility and the same capacity to work with the different sources on campus for funding, and making sure that they're doing the best that they can.
Thanks so much. Michael?
Yeah, I think on this, Leah actually has an outstanding idea to make sure that representatives are reaching out to these people, but I'll let her talk about that. And yeah, it's just being open to them, listening to them, reaching out to them. I know there's some concerns about the way programming is done and the cultural houses are presented during Camp Yale. So making sure that incoming freshmen understand that cultural houses aren't just for people of that ethnicity, but for everyone.
Great, thanks so much. Leah?
And I appreciate that that is actually where it's going to go. Under the secondary constituency, I think not only will you have to rely on somehow getting that information to us, we as a representative would be coming to open meetings in the cultural house and hoping to become a part of your community to really understand the concerns you have, and then also when you have any issue or idea, you know exactly who to turn to.
Great, thanks so much. Sarah?
I'm a peer liaison for the Asian American Cultural Center for next year. So, of course, our connection with the cultural houses is something that's going to be very important to me. And realizing that they are also students who just go to our university, they're a part of clubs just as all of us are. They peer liaisons work on like mental health issues within cultural centers or just different cultural aspects people face. So just being able to sit down, go search out reasons that they might need funding, need help, is what YCC should be doing.
Great, thanks so much, guys. We're going to take one more question from the floor.
I went that side. So let's go ahead with Rachel Miller over there. Come on, girl, stand up. You got it.
Hi, I'm a relatively well-informed person about politics and stuff that's going on campus, but I have no idea who my YCC reps are. And I've never received an email from my YCC reps. I've never spoken to my YCC reps. I had to look them up today. They're both freshmen. I've never seen my YCC reps. So my question is, why do we have YCC reps on based on the college system if they're not accountable to the college students themselves? And how can you ensure that there's more accountability and transparency in what those representatives are doing?
Okay, great. So we'll start with Sarah. So you're the only one who's started, right? So we'll go to Sarah, and then we'll just go down the line and we'll ask the answers.
Okay. That is like a huge problem. They should be the first people you think of when you want to reach out. It shouldn't be like, I have to reach someone from another college. Like, you should be able to have that resource. One thing that is in the Constitution for next year is that YCC reps must attend the college meeting. So if you attend your college meeting, that I don't know if it's held weekly, bi-weekly, you're able to speak directly to them. They should be a more visible part of your campus, and that's something that we're trying to promote. If we're promoting a transparent YCC, these are the people from the grassroots that need to be reaching out to everyone.
Great, thanks so much.
So I think it's incredibly important that you know who represents you, Rachel. And something that I've done over the course of my time as student organizations director is I've held over 60 hours of office hours. So student organizations can come to me and ask me questions about the decisions that the people I led, about those decisions that we made. And I think that that's an important first step, and it demonstrates a commitment to transparency and a commitment to accountability. And we need to start working with the representatives now to reach out into the communities which they serve. And I think Leah has a great point to that regard as well.
Great, thanks so much. Michael?
And yeah, I like the office hours idea. I'm committed to having office hours in all of the colleges, rotating on a weekly basis. But the issue, fundamentally, Rachel, is that people don't run for YCC. 7 out of 12 colleges didn't even have elections. And when you have people just signing up, they're not elected, they're not accountable to their constituents. And that's why one of the things I've done is identify leaders in colleges that I'm familiar with and encourage those people to run. Because, and this isn't true for everyone, they're outstanding YCC reps, but in a lot of times, they're just not accessible to their constituents.
Can I rebut to that?
Sure, go ahead.
The only issue I see with that is that it seems as if you're creating a body to work with you, and it should be reaching out to everyone. Should have the opportunity to run. We shouldn't identify people we want to work with because everyone is someone we should be wanting to work with.
Can I rebut that?
I think everyone decided they wanted to use rebuttals like pretty much at the end of this meeting.
You have one left.
Sure, go for it.
So, I mean, there's a reason I'm running 6 people and not 15 people. And that's because I do want to work with everyone. And if I win, there will be a very long conversation where we'll have a kumbaya moment, and we'll all be best friends. And I'm very confident because people on YCC want to make Yale better. And I'm confident that we'll all come along on that. But there needs to be a broader cultural change between YCC and Yale, and that's something I'm committed to leading.
Great, thank you so much. Moving on to Leah.
So I think you brought up a really valid point that students here on campus really do organize in ways that aren't necessarily based on the college system. And I think for election purposes, right now, I think it does make sense to just elect 2 from each college. But where the secondary constituency comes into this is it would allow people who are organized on other reasons, different interests, to really find a representative to represent them. Also, an additional tool I have to speak to this is Fix Our Campus, which kind of would allow you directly online to speak to a body that isn't necessarily one rep, so it kind of obviates the need for that.
I'd like to use my last rebuttal.
Go ahead.
I think that we certainly have to do a better job of reaching out, but students are not going to even want to engage with the YCC if the YCC can't solve their problem. So why would a student want to come seek our assistance in resolving a matter if we don't have the authority to do that? That's why we need to have a greater impact here on campus. That's why we need to establish rapport with administrators and formalize that process so that we actually have the ability to answer to students and we actually have the ability to address your claims.
Can I rebut that?
Rachel, just go ahead mentioned
Just
it's
go
all
ahead.
up, yeah.
Let's throw it down. Sarah, you've got one. Leah, you've got one after this.
Okay, awesome. I
Care about
completely,
yourself now.
ooh, I completely agree with everything you just said. But I do think as a council and as a student body, we lose a lot of the power that as a student body we could have by not, at the same time that we address these larger issues, playing a constant support and partnership role with different communities within Yale College. I mean, if YCC can play a partnership role with Dwight Hall in promoting day of service, that's only a benefit for everyone. So I think that this would allow for a lot more things like that to happen.
Okay. Is that it? We're not gonna, that was our last question from the floor, so I guess it's good.
I have a quick question for Michael, really quickly.
But we're not going to do that. But thank you for your enthusiasm. Let's talk to my guests. So let's give a big round of applause for our president's finish.